Hi there everyone, this is chapters 12x and 13 of my Fire Emblem 5 Paragon Mode 0% Growth playthrough, and as you're well aware, we are done with 1 and Mekkah.
Hi.
So this is the third chapter in a row during this section of the game that features Fog of War, and the average player by now will probably be very frustrated and kind of burnt out on Thracia 776, because Fog of War is a pain in the butt to deal with, and they just finished a previous chapter in which there was an enemy hidden in the fog, spamming an incurable status staff at the player. This chapter, unfortunately, is more of kind of the same. There is another enemy hidden in the fog that doesn't put your units to sleep this time, but she does steal your stuff. But fortunately, we have a strategy in place to stop that from happening, basically on turn 1.
Laura is warped into the throne room, and she can talk to the boss there. His name is Parn, and he is recruitable. And this does a lot of things for us at once. First off, it takes away these leadership stars, and it causes every enemy, or almost every enemy on the map, to try and run away, so we don't have to deal with them. It promotes Laura into a dancer, which actually reduces her stats, so she will be mostly a dancer from now on. A very useful one at that. And it also lets us use Parn for this chapter. And most importantly, he steals the thief staff that Tina is using on us. Tina is standing right next to him, and she would be harassing us with that thief staff if we didn't do this. We can recruit Tina with Safi, but Safi does need to be carried towards the throne room, so that's why this chapter is going to take a while, even though we've pretty much trivialized it.
The thief staff, as its name implies, allows a user to steal an item from the inventory of any target with lower magic stat than the user. And because Tina starts out in Magic in class, she by default has higher magic than, for example, Dagdar, Ronin, or Lifis. Although if you were playing with growth, it is entirely possible at this point to deploy a team of units that have a higher magic set than she does. You can start base magic stats really low, but it's still better just to use the strategy that I use and get things over with and not deal with the hassle of like pushing numbers around. She starts with another staff in her inventory called the Unlock Staff. This one she won't use as an enemy, but what the Unlock Staff does is it allows her to unlock any door or chest on the map and obtain an item within any chest that she unlocks. Both these staves are exclusive to her, so that makes her a very important staff user over the course of this playthrough.
Salem puts a seemingly random sword fighter to sleep. This is the last recruitable character of this chapter. His name is Trude, and he will only join you if you capture him or if you talk to him with Parn. But since Parn and Trude start so far apart, this is by far the easier way, just putting him to sleep, because he tries to run away, and then capture him with like Dagdar. Trude isn't going to be very useful at all. We have two better sword fighters in Shiva and Marita, and we don't plan on using them. Parn, however, is going to be a very useful sword fighter. Even though he's a rogue, a promoted version of Lifis, he is much better in pretty much every way. He's got a bunch of great skills. He can steal, and he also has Vantage and Soul. His combat is also really great, because he has 5 pursuit critical, and he comes with a really good sword called the King Sword. The King Sword is brave, and it also gives the wielder charm, and has 20 base crit, so it works pretty well with his 5 pursuit critical to give him a guaranteed crit setup. So expect to be seeing quite a lot of Parn in this playthrough.
Yeah, the King Sword is a really ridiculous weapon. Not only is it brave, with 20 critical and giving the charm skill to the wielder, but it's also only a C-rank sword, so even Leif can use it at base. And in this playthrough, it's generally more beneficial for him to just carry it around and passively give out the charm boost than it is to use it in combat, because it's kind of overkill, although there are circumstances in which we need to use it to that end. There are some other treasures in this chest that we're trying to get. Salem is working his way towards an Armorslayer. Lifis is trying to find a shield ring. There is a charge manual in a chest over by Ronin, and there is also a fortify staff hidden in the fog. And finally, Tina is going to use one use of her Unlock Staff to obtain a Night Proof located across the wall. Most of these treasures you cannot get if you're trying to play this chapter normally, because the thieves will just steal them and then run away from them before you have a chance to do anything. So that's another reason to cheese this chapter in the way that we did. And finally, it's worth pointing out that this is one of those chapters in which it's very clear that having movement stars could have saved turns. All the units that we used to either move Safi towards Tina or to get Leif towards the throne have movement stars, and so if we activated like 2 movement stars over the course of the chapter, that could have just saved a turn. So that's it for chapter 12x, finished in 6 turns. Let's move on to chapter 13.
Chapter 13 brings back memories from chapter 9, because it has the exact same objective. There's a red arrow where the city of Tara is located, that we need to defend, but we also need to escape from it. And just like in Chapter 9, we can trivialize this chapter by using Karin to fly over most of the obstacles and bring Leif to the escape point. This time it's quite a bit harder to do so compared to Chapter 9, because first off, the enemies start a lot closer to this point, so it's harder to defend. And second, a lot of these enemies are Ballista, and these will one-shot Karin with ease, so we need to figure out a way around that.
Also, much like in Chapter 9, to assist us in defending the escape point are some blue units that are going to start out in a convenient place. These consist of a Duke Knight named Glade. He looks like Finn on the map, and he is in fact a childhood friend of Finn's and also Sofina's husband, so it's fitting that he's leading these units. And he's accompanied by 5 literal generic units. They are 3 Lance Knights and 2 Bow Knights, and they are even more generic than Alva, Kane, and Robert were back in Chapter 9. These guys are probably more known for their contributions of free weapons than they are for any sort of combat prowess that they have, because their stats are randomized and they can actually be really bad. Now, on turn 1 we have them take a weird formation, and this formation induces the enemy to think that the shortest path to Tara is to go around the left, to loop around the cliff and come into Tara from the back instead of from the front, and this allows them to kind of waste their movement a little bit, so it makes it easier for us to escape on an upcoming turn. Karin also has to put herself on the edge of one of the Ballista's ranges. This is pretty much unavoidable unless she were promoted and she had an extra point of movement, but we don't have a promotion item for her, so in order to facilitate her dodging a lethal blow, we put Leif next to her with the charm bonus from the Kingsword, and we also put Fergus within support range for the extra 10 avoid. And if you recall back in Chapter 9, everybody that was deployed that was not Leif or Fergus got left behind and joined the ranks of Dalshin. So, Mekkah, I don't know how you feel about that.
I'm actually mad about this decision, because Fergus is easily the best unit in the game, and leaving him behind is probably the worst decision you've ever made in Fire Emblem. Actually, it's probably the worst decision you've made in your life. I guess the only reason to leave Fergus behind is to make things harder on yourself, which I can appreciate, kind of like playing 0% growth, but I'm not happy about it, not at all.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, those were some strong words from a salty Dutchman.
Fuck you.
This is my playthrough, and I can do as I please, and I decided to leave Fergus behind in this chapter. So the product of that little amount of work that he did was that Karin can now fly within a 2-tile range of the lower Ballista, and that renders him unable to attack her. As far as the upper Ballista is concerned, the generic Lance Knights have done a remarkable feat. They've managed to gang up on it and kill it somehow. That's the reason why we checked their stats before we started going through the chapter, because if the Ballista had too high defense, or if the Lance Knights all had low enough strength, speed, and constitution, if they had trouble damaging or doubling the Ballista, then they're not going to be able to kill it even if all 3 of them ganged up on it, and we would have to reset.
There's more evidence of Dun Dun being a heartless bastard this turn, because one of the Lance Knights was sacrificed. Believe it or not, this is fine, because even if the Lance Knights or Bow Knights manage to escape, they are so generic that they do not join us for the rest of the game, so you only control them for this chapter. It's also worth noting that if you play this chapter casually and you kill the boss, all the enemies that start on the map will stop attacking you and instead flee if they can, and a bunch of reinforcements will come up, and they will keep coming until turn 30, so you want to be out of there before then.
So we're going to finish this chapter by doing the Karin give Leif dismount get rescue trick again. In doing the chapter this way, we're missing out on a lot of things. There's a bishop here with a physics staff who's standing on top of a house with a knight proof that we can get. There's a special talk conversation that you can get between Selfina and Glade that yields a brave bow, which is pretty good. But that's all worth it for completing this chapter within the span of 3 turns. So, see you next time.
See ya.